Have you ever wondered what truly makes life meaningful as we grow older? As we navigate the inevitable changes of aging, many of us find ourselves grappling with questions about happiness, fulfillment, and the relationships that truly matter. In this heartfelt journey through Grandpa Lee's life, you'll discover not just a personal story, but profound insights into the essence of friendship, family bonds, and the pursuit of inner peace. Join us as we explore Grandpa Lee's inspiring evolution from a hard-working young man to a wise elder reflecting on life's true treasures. You'll witness the struggles and triumphs he faced, the lessons he learned about wealth beyond money, and the vital role of companionship in overcoming loneliness. By the end of this video, you'll not only be touched by his story but also equipped with valuable life lessons that could transform your perspective on aging, happiness, and what it means to truly live. Don't miss out on the wisdom that can enrich your journey. Stay tuned. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. With dreams as bright as the stars and courage deeply rooted in his heart, Grandpa Lee set out on a path of relentless struggle. He knew from the beginning that his journey wouldn't be easy, but he embraced every hardship with a quiet resilience that speaks to the depths of human strength. In those early days, Grandpa Lee could only find work doing grueling labor, moving bricks and hauling heavy cement bags at construction sites. Every single day tested his endurance, pushing him to his physical limits, yet he never uttered a single complaint. Deep inside, he understood that if he wanted to carve out a life of dignity and purpose, he had to rely on no one but himself. Through his sweat and effort, he hoped to change his fate and rewrite his destiny. On the construction site, he found camaraderie among other workers, men and women from rural areas with stories and dreams like his. They laughed together, cried together, and found strength in each other's resolve. Through those tough, unyielding days, they became his family, his lifeline, binding their fates together in shared hope. As months turned into years, Grandpa Lee took every opportunity to learn and grow. He began picking up technical skills, mastering carpentry, and electrical work with an intensity that left others inspired. Day after day, he trained his hands to create, repair, and perfect. His dedication paid off, and soon his wages increased. As he honed his skills, he also found love. On a bright day at the site, fate introduced him to Xiaolan, a compassionate and hard-working young woman who, like him, had come from humble beginnings. In her presence, he felt a quiet joy, a warmth he had never known before. They quickly fell in love, bonding over their shared dreams and unyielding work ethic. Together, they began to dream of a future filled with love and mutual support. Years passed, and they finally married, moving into a modest, cozy house that they called their own. Although money was tight, happiness filled their home. When their first child was born, a beautiful boy with his father's tenacity and his mother's gentle heart, Grandpa Lee's determination grew even stronger. To create a better life for his family, he worked tirelessly, often taking on side jobs and renovating houses in his spare time. His craftsmanship soon earned a reputation, and gradually, he built his network of clients. His income increased, and his family began to feel the stability he had long dreamed of. Despite the progress, Grandpa Lee never stopped learning. He continued to push himself, acquiring new skills and knowledge, and building on his experience to improve his work. After years of dedication, he finally saved enough money to buy a spacious home, a dream that had once seemed so distant. Standing in the doorway of his new house, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. Everything he saw before him was a testament to his perseverance and sacrifice, a reminder that he had built this life brick by brick, calloused hand by calloused hand. With this newfound stability, Grandpa Lee's aspirations grew even bigger. He wanted his children to have more opportunities than he had. So, he worked even harder, venturing into small businesses. Although the risks were daunting, his heart was filled with courage and hope. And slowly, his efforts paid off. His business flourished, his savings grew, and his children thrived, studying at reputable universities. The pride he felt watching them blossom was beyond words. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. But with time, the quiet march of aging made its presence known. His body, once so strong, began to show signs of wear. Mornings greeted him with aching joints, and tasks that once felt easy now seemed mountainous. Looking in the mirror, he noticed his hair had turned silver, and wrinkles mapped the stories of his struggles and victories. The world around him was changing, moving forward faster than he could keep up. Tall skyscrapers replaced the open fields, and technology he barely understood seemed to overtake every aspect of life. As he reflected on his journey, Grandpa Lee was filled with a mix of pride, nostalgia, and a quiet sense of fulfillment. His life, with its ups and downs, its laughter and tears, had been a journey worth every hardship. But now, he realized, it was time to slow down. Though he had a comfortable home and ample savings, he felt an emptiness, a longing for something deeper. He knew in his heart that true happiness was not found in material success alone. So he began to search within himself, pondering the meaning of life, and contemplating what truly mattered. Health became his focus. Each morning, he took slow, purposeful walks, savoring the fresh air, and practicing small acts of gratitude for his body and the life it had carried him through. He knew that a healthy body was the foundation of a joyful life, and he was determined to make the most of his golden years. As the years passed, the weight of life's uncertainties grew. Medical bills and living expenses seemed to rise faster than he could save, reminding him that life's twists were beyond anyone's control. He would sit in the quiet of his living room, mentally calculating his savings and wondering if they would be enough to cover unforeseen needs. The youthful notion that money would bring peace now felt like a distant illusion, replaced by the sober reality that security is always fragile. Yet, amid these worries, he found solace in the love he had cultivated and the life he had lived. In his spacious, silent home, Grandpa Lee realized that despite life's unpredictability, he had built a legacy of resilience, love, and courage that would live on in his children. As Grandpa Lee's children grew up and embraced the world on their terms, he found himself increasingly alone in the large house he had worked so tirelessly to build. Each child was busy with their own life, caught up in work, raising families, and meeting the endless demands of modern life. While Grandpa Lee understood and respected their busyness, he couldn't escape the pangs of loneliness that filled his days. He had once believed that building a comfortable life and saving wealth would keep his family close, that the fruits of his labor would somehow translate into shared moments of joy and laughter with his children and grandchildren. But he came to realize that money, no matter how much he had saved, could not buy the warmth of genuine companionship. On one birthday, with his heart filled with eager anticipation, he hoped that his children would come home to celebrate with him. He prepared a table overflowing with their favorite dishes and bought a big, beautifully decorated cake. However, as the day wore on, one by one, his children called to apologize, each too tied up with work to return. Grandpa Lee's heart sank as he listened to their hurried words over the phone. As he hung up, he was left staring at the feast he had lovingly prepared, with only the silence of the empty room for company. At that moment, he felt an overwhelming wave of disappointment, a profound emptiness that no amount of wealth could ever fill. He understood for the first time, in a deeply painful way, that money could not buy family closeness. To cope with his loneliness, Grandpa Lee turned to spending his savings on experiences he thought might bring him joy. He dined in high-end restaurants, shopped at luxurious malls, and joined exclusive travel groups. But each outing only offered fleeting pleasure, momentary distractions that left him feeling even emptier upon his return to the quiet, echoing halls of his home. The expensive clothes, the fancy dinners, the scenic tours, none of it could fill the void in his heart. During one of his trips, Grandpa Lee met an elderly man who, like him, was traveling alone. They struck up a conversation and shared their life stories. The man spoke about happiness not as something you could buy or own, but as something that came from within, from a sense of inner peace, gratitude, and connection with others. These words lingered with Grandpa Lee, stirring up memories he had almost forgotten. He remembered the tough but joy-filled days he had shared with his wife, Xiaolan, when they had little money but abundant happiness. He recalled the precious moments of raising his children, watching their innocent laughter fill the house with warmth. Those times, he realized, were filled with companionship and meaning, unmeasurable by wealth. Returning home, Grandpa Lee decided it was time for a change. He resolved to no longer chase material pleasures, but to focus on nurturing his spirit and his sense of connection to the world around him. He took daily walks in the park, letting the fresh air and natural beauty ease his mind. He joined community activities, making new friends and sharing their stories, slowly rebuilding the human bonds he had lost over time. Through this, he found a renewed sense of joy, a feeling that he hadn't experienced in years, a happiness that came not from luxury, but from simplicity, kindness, and shared moments. Yet, a quiet worry still lingered at the back of his mind. Even with his newfound contentment, Grandpa Lee couldn't ignore the uncertainty that loomed over the future. Although he had savings, he knew the unpredictable nature of life, especially as he grew older. Rising medical costs, unexpected emergencies, these concerns haunted him. Seeking peace of mind, he consulted financial advisors to learn about stable investments, careful planning, and ways to secure his future. He invested part of his savings wisely, making sure he could rely on it if the need arose. In the process, Grandpa Lee gained a deeper understanding of what true wealth encompassed. Money was important, yes, but he discovered that wealth was more than just a financial figure. It included his health, his peace of mind, his continued growth, and the relationships he fostered. He began to take better care of himself, keeping a balanced diet, exercising regularly, and reading books that enriched his mind. He also built connections within his community, finding comfort in the companionship of neighbors and friends. This life of balance and grounded purpose became his true measure of wealth. As he sat in his familiar, quiet living room, he gazed around, taking in the details of the home that had once symbolized his achievements. The once pristine walls were marked by the gentle wear of years gone by, and the furniture, once polished and new, had lost its shine. This house, he realized, held the memories of a life lived fully, the laughter, the struggles, the joys, and the sorrows. But as he continued to age, the house that had been his sanctuary now seemed like a relic of a life past, a space too large for one man alone. Grandpa Lee had come full circle in his understanding of life's true riches. Material possessions, he learned, can only offer so much. It is the moments of connection, the peace within, and the love shared that make life worth living. Grandpa Lee's house, once the ultimate symbol of his perseverance and triumph over hardship, had gradually become a source of unrelenting stress and financial strain. The house, which had once filled him with pride, was now a weight on his shoulders, draining both his resources and his spirit. It began innocently enough, a small leak in the roof that he noticed one rainy evening. What seemed like a minor issue quickly turned into a costly ordeal. He had to hire contractors for the repair, and watching them work, he couldn't ignore the expense or the reality that more issues might be lying in wait. Soon after, the water system began to act up, with pipes clanging and sputtering, leaking and clogging unpredictably. The electrical wiring, too, began to falter, with lights flickering or fuses blowing out, each time requiring him to call in a specialist. With each repair, he felt a little more of his savings slip away, and he couldn't shake the creeping worry that more problems would arise as the house aged. As if the constant repairs weren't enough, his other living expenses began to balloon as well. Property taxes rose each year, and the cost of heating his spacious home grew heavier during the long winters. Even the monthly utility bills seemed to add up faster than he remembered. He sat down one evening with a pen, paper, and calculator, meticulously adding up all the expenses. When he finally totaled the numbers, he was stunned to see just how much of his monthly income was being swallowed by his beloved home. What had once felt like a dream come true was now consuming a substantial portion of his retirement savings. His thoughts drifted to his younger years when he had worked himself to the bone to pay off the mortgage. At that time, every sacrifice had felt worth it because he was investing in his family's future, building a secure foundation for his children. Now, the house was entirely his, and though he should have felt at peace, he was haunted by an anxious knot in his stomach over its growing costs. Beyond the financial burdens, an emotional weight settled over the house, a quiet loneliness that was impossible to ignore. His children, all grown with families of their own, visited only rarely. His beloved wife, Xiaolan, had passed away several years prior, leaving him with a painful void that even the happiest memories could not fill. What had once been a lively, joy-filled home, bustling with the laughter of children and the warmth of family gatherings, now stood quiet and empty. Each day, Grandpa Li roamed the house alone, his footsteps echoing down the halls, each sound only intensifying the solitude that permeated the walls. He missed the vibrant life that had once filled this space, and as he walked through the rooms, he couldn't help but feel the aching hollowness of its current silence. Desperate to revive a sense of warmth and life in his home, Grandpa Li decided to make a few changes. He began by filling the rooms with fresh flowers, roses, lilies, and colorful daisies in vases on every table and windowsill. Their fragrance filled the air, and their bright colors added a touch of vitality that the house had been missing. He added green plants on the balcony, carefully tending to each one, finding a quiet joy in their gentle growth. But even with these small changes, the house still felt too large and too empty. So, he decided to adopt a companion, a little gray kitten he named Mimi. From the moment Mimi entered the house, her lively presence brought Grandpa Li a renewed sense of purpose. Every morning, he fed her, played with her, and watched as she darted around the rooms, chasing shadows and exploring every nook and cranny. Mimi's playful antics brought a smile to his face, and for the first time in a while, the house felt less empty. He found comfort in her warmth as she curled up beside him on the couch or lay purring softly at his feet. Despite the joy Mimi brought him, the emptiness in his heart remained. As night fell and the wind whistled outside, a profound silence still settled over him. Lying in bed, he found himself listening to the quiet sounds of the night, the creaks of the house, the faint hum of the refrigerator, all reminders of the solitude that had crept into his life. He began to miss the past, those precious days when his children's laughter filled the rooms and when Xiaolan's presence had been a constant comfort. One day, an old friend visited him, filling the house with the sound of familiar laughter for the first time in what felt like ages. As they strolled through the home, his friend marveled at its size and beauty, but after a moment, sighed thoughtfully. "This is a wonderful home, Grandpa Li, but isn't it too quiet, too lonely for one person?" Grandpa Li paused, feeling a weight in his chest. He forced a small smile and replied, "I used to think having a big house was the ultimate happiness, a reward for all my hard work. But now, it feels more like a heavy burden than a joy." His friend nodded, understanding the bittersweet truth of his words. "You know," his friend continued, "a home isn't about the walls or the size. It's about the warmth and the people in it. Have you thought about maybe renting out part of the house? Or even selling it and moving somewhere smaller? Somewhere that feels less empty?" His friend's words planted a seed in Grandpa Li's mind. Selling or renting out the house felt like an overwhelming decision, and he had such a strong emotional attachment to it. Every corner of this house held memories. The marks on the wall where his children had measured their height over the years, the worn spots on the carpet where they used to play, the kitchen table that had seen countless family meals. The house was a piece of his heart, a testament to a lifetime of memories and sacrifices. Parting with it would feel like leaving behind a part of himself. But as he sat alone in the quiet that night, he couldn't shake his friend's words. He realized the truth in them. This house, once a symbol of security, was now an isolating reminder of what he had lost. It wasn't bringing him the happiness he had once imagined. It was only holding him back from finding peace in his later years. Maybe, just maybe, his friend was right. Perhaps it was time to let go of this house and look for something simpler, something that would allow him to live without the constant worry of maintenance costs, the burdens of too much space, and the reminder of days that had slipped away. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. In the weeks that followed, Grandpa Lee found himself torn between his deep love for the house and the practical need to downsize. He knew it was a significant decision, one that would require him to confront his attachments and let go of a lifetime of memories held within these walls. Slowly, he began researching options, speaking with real estate agents, and even visiting a few smaller homes closer to the community center where he could meet others in his age group. Although the idea of leaving was painful, he felt a quiet sense of relief, knowing he was taking a step toward a life of greater simplicity and connection. Gradually, Grandpa Lee came to accept that the true meaning of home was not in the size of the house or the wealth he had poured into it, but in the comfort, warmth, and companionship it held. He began to see the value of a life that prioritized human connection over material possessions, understanding that his remaining years would be richer if he shared them with people rather than empty rooms. While letting go of his house would be a journey filled with nostalgia and loss, it was also one of self-discovery and peace. On a quiet morning, he looked around his home for the last time, taking in every detail. He knew he would carry these memories with him wherever he went, for they were not bound to a house but to his heart. With a deep breath, he embraced the change, looking forward to a new chapter where he could find solace not in the walls around him, but in the relationships and connections that awaited him. He understood that, in the end, happiness was not in the weight of a house, but in the lightness of a life well shared. Grandpa Lee knew he needed to make a change if he wanted his later years to be fulfilling rather than simply filled with memories and regrets. With a heavy heart, he began by inquiring about the house, studying market conditions, and understanding relevant policies. He sat by the window each day, gazing outside, his mind swirling with thoughts of loneliness and longing. The home he once cherished had become a silent prison, keeping him confined within its walls. The wealth he had worked so hard to accumulate had lost its shine, feeling hollow and meaningless without the laughter and warmth of the family around him. His children, whom he loved deeply, were wrapped up in their own lives. His eldest son, far away in a bustling city, was tirelessly working to establish himself, wrapped in the pressures and competition of his career. Their phone calls were always rushed, often filled with his son's sighs about work stress, and they ended after only a few words. His youngest daughter, busy with her own small family, was immersed in raising her children and supporting her husband, with little time left to tend to her distant father. Grandpa Lee understood their lives were demanding and filled with their struggles, yet understanding didn't ease the ache in his heart. He spent many days pacing alone in his room, recalling the days of his children's youth, when the house was brimming with laughter, play, and life. Those memories felt so close, yet so unreachable, like a dream slipping through his fingers. When he could no longer hold back his yearning, Grandpa Lee would flip through old photo albums, running his fingers over the faces of his young children, his heart swelling with a bittersweet mix of pride and longing. He'd smile and speak to the photos, recounting the small moments of their childhood as if his children were still there, listening, giggling, and sharing his stories. He tried to convince himself that their busy lives were a mark of his success as a father, proof that he had raised independent, thriving adults. But the silence that followed these conversations with photographs only deepened the hollowness within him. To fill his days, Grandpa Lee tried participating in community activities, joining chess games, and chatting with other elderly people. For a while, these gatherings provided a sense of camaraderie and helped him escape his loneliness. But every time he returned home, the emptiness would resurface, its presence growing more pronounced. He even considered adopting another pet to keep him company, remembering the warmth that his previous kitten, Mimi, had brought him. However, he hesitated, worrying about the responsibility, his declining health, and whether he could truly care for another living creature. Days blurred together, filled with loneliness, and Grandpa Lee's once hopeful spirit started to wane. He began questioning the meaning of all he had once pursued so ardently. His achievements, his house, his savings, they were tangible proof of his hard work, but he wondered if they had brought him any real happiness. He had spent his life working tirelessly to provide for his family, to create a stable life. Yet here he was, alone, clinging to memories. One evening, while watching television, a family-centered program caught his attention. The scenes of love, care, and unity between the family members stirred something deep within him. As he watched parents supporting their children, and grandparents doting on their grandchildren, tears welled up in his eyes. The scenes touched a place in his heart he had tried to ignore, and he found himself filled with an overwhelming longing for his children. Picking up the phone, he intended to call them, but as he heard the dial tone, he hesitated, feeling that his call might be a burden on their busy lives. After a long pause, he hung up, the loneliness weighing even more heavily on him. As the weeks went by, Grandpa Lee's health started to deteriorate. He often felt weak and tired, his appetite dwindled, and a sense of lethargy crept over him. Worried, he visited the hospital, where the doctor gently told him that his physical health was largely fine. It was his emotional state, his growing depression, that was taking a toll on his body. The doctor advised him to connect with his family more and to cultivate a positive mindset, suggesting that isolation would only worsen his health. Grandpa Lee nodded, though a feeling of helplessness settled over him. He wanted to be close to his children, to share time and laughter with them, but how could he expect them to carve out time from their own busy lives? In his quiet moments, Grandpa Lee began reflecting on his life's choices, wondering if he had, perhaps, sacrificed too much of his desires in the pursuit of security for his family. He recalled an old dream. His passion for painting, a love that had been set aside long ago for the demands of providing for his family. He had dreamed of being an artist, capturing the world's beauty through colors and shapes. Now, with his responsibilities shifted and his days more empty, he wondered if he might still find joy in this abandoned dream. So, with renewed determination, Grandpa Lee bought painting supplies and began teaching himself to paint. Every morning, he would sit by his window, brush in hand, capturing the view outside, the trees, the sky, the quiet street. His strokes were unrefined, his techniques still developing, but in those hours of painting, he found a sense of peace that had long eluded him. The loneliness faded, replaced by a quiet joy as he became absorbed in the colors and shapes on his canvas. Through his art, he felt as though he could once again create something meaningful, something that belonged solely to him. Yet, despite this small joy, the nights remained long and lonely. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he would wonder about life's purpose and whether his family would be there when he needed them most. The painting helped him pass the time, but it could not fully chase away the emptiness that still lingered in his heart. Each day, he found himself longing for the warmth of family, hoping for a sign that he wasn't as alone as he felt. One day, while resting at home, he received a call from his eldest son. The conversation was brief, filled with the usual pleasantries and updates, but in the end, his son promised to visit him soon. The words, though simple, were like a balm for Grandpa Lee's heart. He held on to that promise, replaying it in his mind as he awaited the day his son would walk through the door, filling his home with the love and presence he so deeply missed. But as the days stretched into weeks, his son's visit kept being postponed. The loneliness settled deeper into his bones, affecting his health even further. Eventually, Grandpa Lee was admitted to the hospital with fatigue and weakness, his body succumbing to the effects of loneliness and depression. Lying in the hospital bed, he gazed out the window at the gray sky, feeling as though his spirit mirrored the bleakness outside. Every breath felt labored, as if each inhale required every ounce of strength he could muster. In this vulnerable state, Grandpa Lee realized just how much he longed for human connection. His heart ached not for the material comforts he had worked so hard to accumulate, but for the love and companionship he had sacrificed along the way. He knew he could not continue down this path, and could not live solely guarded by wealth and memories. What he craved, he finally understood, was a life of shared moments, one filled with love, laughter, and the simple presence of others. As he lay in the hospital bed, Grandpa Lee made a silent vow. If he recovered, he would make changes, not for the sake of wealth or possessions, but for his soul's peace. He would reconnect with his children, reach out to friends, and seek a life enriched by people rather than things. His journey was far from over, but he now knew that his true wealth lay not in his savings or his home, but in the relationships he had yet to mend, the warmth he still hoped to find. Upon learning of his illness, Grandpa Lee's heart brimmed with both fear and fragile hope. In his mind, he pictured his children rushing to his side, filling his hospital room with the warmth of their presence, their gentle words offering comfort amid his pain and worry. He envisioned their hands resting on his, their concerned eyes reassuring him that he was not alone in this struggle. However, reality delivered a hard blow to his hopes. His eldest son called, explaining he was on an essential business trip that he couldn't abandon, and although he promised to visit once work allowed, his words felt hollow. Grandpa Lee then reached out to his youngest daughter, only to hear that her child had fallen ill and was unable to leave home. She mentioned that her husband would visit him instead, but to Grandpa Lee, it was a cold substitute for her presence. As he listened to his children's words, one excuse after another, disappointment settled deep in his heart. He couldn't fathom why, at his most vulnerable moment, the ones he had sacrificed so much for couldn't make time for him. Memories of his youth came flooding back, years spent working day and night, forgoing his dreams to secure a better life for them. He had worked tirelessly to provide them with stability, shielded them from the harsh realities of life, and raised them with values of compassion and responsibility. Yet here he was, facing illness alone, with no children by his side. In his hospital room, he felt the sting of isolation. Other patients had family members hovering nearby, holding their hands, speaking words of encouragement, and filling the space with laughter. He found himself envying these families, feeling a profound emptiness each time he glanced around his quiet room, which was filled only by the hum of machines and the footsteps of passing nurses. Although the nurses were attentive and kind, their care could never replace the presence of his own family. The loneliness weighed on him more heavily with each passing day. The empty silence of his room, punctuated only by the occasional beep of medical monitors, felt almost suffocating. His health began to deteriorate, not only due to his illness but also from the crushing solitude. Doubt crept into his mind as he questioned his role in his children's lives. Did they truly value him? Had his years of sacrifice been in vain? He felt like an old, forgotten man, adrift and unseen in a world that had once been filled with the love and laughter of his family. One afternoon, his daughter's husband arrived, carrying a bag of fruits and some nutritional supplements. After a few polite words and a brief inquiry about Grandpa Lee's health, he hurriedly excused himself, citing work commitments. Grandpa Lee watched as his son-in-law disappeared down the corridor, feeling a wave of bitterness and sorrow. He knew that his son-in-law had his responsibilities, but he couldn't shake the hope that his children would come, that they would sit with him, talk to him, and show him that he mattered. As time went on, Grandpa Lee's health began to stabilize, but his spirit bore the scars of this painful experience. He could no longer ignore the emptiness that had grown between himself and his children. For years, he had believed that family was built on the sacrifices he made and the stability he provided. Yet now he wondered if something crucial had been missed along the way. He spent hours in quiet contemplation, trying to understand the true meaning of family and whether he had misunderstood it all along. Amid this introspection, Grandpa Lee encountered unexpected kindness from others. His neighbors, upon hearing of his illness, came to visit him in the hospital. They brought home-cooked meals and bright bouquets, and sat by his bedside, chatting with him and sharing stories. Their visits brought a warmth that began to ease his loneliness, a reminder that compassion and care could come from many places. A young volunteer also became a regular visitor, a gentle presence who helped him fetch water, bought his meals, and took him for short walks around the hospital grounds. The volunteer shared stories from his own life, describing the beauty of ordinary days and dreams for the future. These acts of kindness filled Grandpa Lee's heart with gratitude, revealing a side of human warmth he hadn't expected to find outside his family. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Slowly, Grandpa Lee's mood began to lift. He found himself smiling at the small gestures of kindness, realizing that family affection wasn't limited to blood ties. It could extend to anyone willing to offer compassion and care. He began to see that he couldn't rely solely on his children to fulfill his emotional needs. He needed to reclaim his independence, to find joy and meaning in his own life. Upon his return home, he felt the familiar loneliness of his empty house, but he also felt a new determination stirring within him. He could still create a fulfilling life, even if his children weren't constantly by his side. Yet, there were moments when the sense of loss crept back. Sitting by the window, watching the world move outside, he felt a pang of sadness, remembering the lively days when his home was filled with laughter. The illness had left him weakened, and even small activities drained his energy. It was during one of these quiet, reflective days that he heard a gentle knock at his door. Opening it, he was greeted by the familiar face of his old friend, Old Zhang, who stood there holding a basket of fruits and smiling warmly. Seeing his friend brought a rush of emotions, and Grandpa Lee felt tears prick his eyes. It was a reminder that, although his children were distant, there were still people in his life who cared. Old Zhang entered with a warmth that filled the room, and they spent hours catching up, sharing memories, and reliving the days of their youth. Old Zhang listened patiently as Grandpa Lee poured out his heart, expressing his frustrations, his feelings of abandonment, and the deep loneliness that had haunted him since his illness. Old Zhang responded with understanding and compassion, gently reminding him that life was unpredictable and that sometimes children grew up to lead lives that, though filled with love, were naturally separate from their parents. Over the following weeks, more friends and neighbors reached out, filling Grandpa Lee's days with companionship and kindness. Each visit was like a small light in his life, warming the cold spaces that had been left empty. Through these connections, Grandpa Lee began to see his life in a new light. Family, he realized, wasn't always defined by blood or proximity. It was found in the people who showed up, who cared, and who brought love into his life without expectation. Inspired by this realization, Grandpa Lee made a decision. He would no longer place his happiness solely in his children's hands. He began to open his heart to those around him, joining local clubs, engaging in community activities, and inviting friends over to share meals. He even rekindled his love for painting, finding joy and peace in capturing the beauty of the world around him. In time, he discovered a strength within himself that he hadn't known existed. He felt fulfilled not because his children were constantly present, but because he had created a life that was rich in friendships and small, meaningful moments. The longing for his children never disappeared entirely, but he no longer felt defined by it. When they visited, he welcomed them with open arms, but he had found his happiness and no longer needed their presence to feel complete. Grandpa Lee's story became a lesson to those around him, a reminder that love and connection could be found in many places, and that happiness often lies in the bonds we form along the way, not only in those we are born into. His journey transformed him from a man weighed down by loneliness and disappointment into someone who saw the beauty in every day, who valued the kindness of friends, and who cherished the simple joys of life. "Old Lee, I heard you were sick. I was so worried that I had to come and see you," Old Zhang said as he entered the room, placing a basket of fresh fruits on the table. Grandpa Lee's eyes brimmed with emotion, his voice momentarily caught in his throat. He could only hold Old Zhang's hand tightly, the simple gesture conveying what words couldn't. Old Zhang settled beside him, gently patting his hand and asking about his health. Before long, their conversation flowed into cherished memories of their younger days, the times they had worked side by side, laughing through the challenges, sharing moments that had shaped them both. Each shared story felt so vivid it was as if they were reliving those moments right there in Grandpa Lee's quiet living room. In the days that followed, a steady stream of old friends filled Grandpa Lee's home, each bringing their unique warmth. Some arrived with homemade dishes, simple, familiar flavors that brought a comforting taste of home. Others brought books and magazines to help Grandpa Lee pass the time. Some friends came simply to sit with him, their presence filling the room with life as they played chess or watched TV together. The house, once cold and quiet, now pulsed with laughter and companionship. Grandpa Lee found himself looking forward to each visit, knowing he wasn't alone and that his friends genuinely cared for him. Among these cherished friends was Old Lee, whom Grandpa Lee had met at the construction sites during his younger days. Old Lee was known for his generous spirit and infectious enthusiasm. The moment he arrived, he busied himself around the house, tidying up and helping Grandpa Lee organize things. He even took Grandpa Lee out to the courtyard to sit in the sun, sharing light-hearted stories and old jokes from their days on the site. Grandpa Lee laughed so heartily that he could almost forget his illness, finding comfort in the warmth of their shared memories. Then there was Old Wong, Grandpa Lee's chess partner. Old Wong brought a chessboard to every visit, eager to engage in their friendly battles of strategy and wit. The games became a ritual, each one intense yet filled with good-natured banter. They reminisced about their youth, discussing life's ups and downs while sharing advice and encouragement. With each game, Grandpa Lee felt his spirits lift, the hours passing effortlessly as they focused on the game and each other. Old Chen, a music enthusiast, added a different kind of joy to Grandpa Lee's days. He would bring his eru, a traditional Chinese string instrument, and play classic melodies that resonated with Grandpa Lee's heart. The soft, soulful notes filled the house, bringing a profound peace that lifted Grandpa Lee's mood. Sometimes, neighbors would gather by the window to listen, drawn by the sound of the music and the laughter that now spilled from Grandpa Lee's home. Surrounded by his friends' unwavering support, Grandpa Lee found himself gradually shedding the loneliness and helplessness that had haunted him. Their visits became a balm for his spirit, and he realized that true friendship, the kind that remains strong even through the passage of years, was a rare and priceless gift. Inspired by his friends' care, Grandpa Lee began to reach out to them more often, inviting them over to reminisce, share life's current joys and challenges, and deepen their already strong bonds. One beautiful day, Grandpa Lee and his friends went for a walk in the park. The sunlight bathed them in warmth, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh blossoms. They strolled, sharing stories and laughter, their voices blending with the sounds of nature. At that moment, Grandpa Lee felt as if he had traveled back to his youth, invigorated by the companionship that surrounded him. His steps felt lighter, and his heart was filled with a sense of renewal and gratitude. As the days turned to weeks, Grandpa Lee's health noticeably improved, his spirit buoyed by the consistent love and support of his friends. He realized he wanted to express his gratitude, to give back a little of the warmth he had received. So he decided to host a gathering, carefully planning the details to make it memorable. He prepared a feast with dishes his friends enjoyed, selected drinks they would appreciate, and even hired a professional photographer to capture the day. When the day arrived, his friends came dressed at their best, filling his home with laughter and a lively warmth that felt almost tangible. During the gathering, Grandpa Lee stood up to deliver a heartfelt speech, his voice filled with sincerity. "When I was at my lowest, it was all of you, my dear friends, who lifted me, who showed me the power of true friendship. I cannot express enough how grateful I am for each one of you. You reminded me of what truly matters in life, and I will always hold this bond close to my heart." His friends responded with their own words of encouragement and affection, assuring Grandpa Lee that he could always rely on them, no matter the time or place. The gathering marked a beautiful new chapter for Grandpa Lee. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment, knowing he was surrounded by people who valued him deeply. The photos taken that day became cherished mementos, reminders of a bond that had endured through life's many seasons. Grandpa Lee hung some of the photos around his home, each frame capturing moments of laughter, joy, and love. In the days that followed, Grandpa Lee's outlook on life continued to brighten. He made it a point to stay in touch with his friends, to celebrate the small things, and to find happiness in the simple joys of friendship. His life, once shadowed by loneliness, was now painted with vibrant colors, each day adding a new stroke of warmth to the canvas of his later years. He felt lighter, not because of a lack of burdens, but because his heart was filled with the companionship that his friends had so generously offered. And as he looked around at the faces of those who had stood by him, Grandpa Lee felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The experience taught Grandpa Lee that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the bonds of friendship, the laughter shared, and the memories created together. His friends had become his family, their care and compassion breathing new life into his world. In their company, Grandpa Lee felt truly rich, surrounded by a wealth that would remain with him, cherished and undiminished, for the rest of his days. From then on, Grandpa Lee's life transformed into one filled with joy, purpose, and newfound vitality. His days no longer revolved around the empty walls of his home, but around the rich experiences he shared with his old friends. Together, they embraced life, taking trips to explore new places, watching movies, attending concerts, and even occasionally trying new restaurants. The laughter, the stories, and the shared adventures added color and meaning to his golden years, weaving a tapestry of memories that grew more vibrant with each passing day. Grandpa Lee realized that while family love held a deep place in his heart, the companionship and support of true friends had become equally indispensable. Through their presence, he saw how friendship could enrich his life, standing steadfast through every stage and making each moment brighter. Having gone through such a profound journey, Grandpa Lee felt as if he had been reborn. His view of life shifted completely, revealing a new perspective that brought him peace and clarity. Surrounded by friends who cared for him and shared his days, Grandpa Lee's heart no longer ached with loneliness. Instead, he felt a renewed positivity about life. Each morning, he would rise early, breathe in the fresh morning air, and take a walk in the park, marveling at the beauty of the sun casting its golden rays over the landscape. Observing people exercising, greeting each other with smiles, and savoring the quiet energy of the morning filled him with a serene appreciation. He realized that his former belief, that owning a house and wealth was everything, had caused him to overlook the true treasures of life, such as his health and the connections that nourished his spirit. In this spirit, Grandpa Lee began to take careful steps toward a healthier lifestyle. He paid close attention to his diet, moving away from unhealthy habits, and instead focusing on balanced meals rich in fruits and vegetables. He gradually cut back on greasy and spicy foods, choosing options that would support his well-being. Additionally, he made regular visits to the doctor for checkups, taking his prescribed medication diligently. Grandpa Lee recognized that only with a healthy body could he continue to fully enjoy the moments and relationships that brought him joy. Each step he took toward better health was a commitment to himself and to the life he now embraced with open arms. With his friends by his side, Grandpa Lee's appreciation for friendship grew even deeper. Their bonds, tested by time and enriched by shared experiences, became an anchor in his life. Together, they reminisced about past moments, laughed over small, silly things, and were there to lift each other's spirits during difficult times. Grandpa Lee marveled at the strength of their connection, realizing that true friendship not only endured over the years but grew stronger in the face of life's inevitable challenges. This unbreakable camaraderie gave him a newfound understanding of loyalty and love, reminding him that the truest friendships, like family, were among life's greatest treasures. He also came to see his family from a new perspective. While his children couldn't always be by his side, he understood that they still cared for him deeply, each in their way. No longer did he feel resentful of their busy schedules. Instead, he embraced a sense of understanding, knowing that they, too, were carrying out their responsibilities and dreams. He took an active interest in their lives, calling them often, not to express loneliness, but to offer words of encouragement and advice. When they visited, he welcomed them with a warm home-cooked meal and shared cherished moments, creating memories that filled his heart with pride and gratitude. He realized that love didn't always require physical presence. It could also be felt in the simple, genuine exchanges they shared. Reflecting on his past, Grandpa Lee recognized the mistakes he had made in his pursuit of material wealth, often overlooking the needs of his own heart. Determined to shift his focus, he chose a new path, one filled with kindness, purpose, and service to others. He enrolled in community volunteer programs, where he found meaning in helping those who needed companionship or support. Grandpa Lee visited nursing homes, sharing stories and laughter with other elderly individuals who, like him, had once felt isolated. He also spent time at orphanages, where he played games with the children and read them stories, his heart warming as he watched their faces light up with joy. These activities filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't known before, a profound joy that came from giving rather than receiving. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. One day, a letter arrived from his young granddaughter. She had drawn a colorful picture of an elderly man surrounded by children playing in a garden, and at the bottom, she had written in big letters, "Grandpa, I love you. I hope you are always healthy and happy." As Grandpa Lee read her words, his heart swelled with emotion, and tears welled up in his eyes. In that small but heartfelt gesture, he felt the warmth of family love and the reassurance that he wasn't alone in the world. Her innocent wish for his happiness strengthened his resolve to live well, not only for himself but for the family he cherished. In the months that followed, Grandpa Lee's life blossomed. His days grew richer with purpose, and his health steadily improved as he maintained his new habits. His outlook became increasingly positive, and the burdens he once carried were replaced by a sense of fulfillment and peace. He realized that he no longer needed to measure his happiness by material possessions or the size of his home. Instead, he relied on the things that truly mattered: a healthy body, the enduring love of his family, the irreplaceable bonds of friendship, and a resilient, optimistic mindset. Each day, Grandpa Lee embraced life with gratitude, seeing it as an ever-evolving journey filled with possibilities. He knew now that his life held meaning not in what he owned, but in the lives he touched and the love he both gave and received. His friendships continued to deepen, his family connections grew more cherished, and his newfound sense of purpose lifted his spirit. With each passing day, Grandpa Lee understood that the true riches of life were found not in wealth or possessions, but in the simple, yet profound joys of health, love, and companionship that he held close to his heart. And so, Grandpa Lee's journey teaches us a powerful lesson about what truly matters in life: health, companionship, and the priceless bonds of friendship and family. His story reminds us that wealth is not measured in material possessions but in the warmth of human connections and the fulfillment of a meaningful life. What have you taken away from Grandpa Lee's experience? Comment below with one lesson that resonated with you and that you'll bring into practice in your own life. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching.